Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you from 22,000 kilometers from Ukraine. So I propose you to present you some the rules of our environmental regulation and which issues have to be protected for our environment in the context of global warming and many change. So the roots of our regulation is that as most part of people knows now that we have no B planet, and it is under yes. Oh, I have it. And
it's like we are on site.
Okay. And so we have no B planet, and we have huge huge pressure because of global warming and human activity, especially because of agriculture and the development of towns and so on. And in Ukraine, a special context with the war that make very strong human pressure on your environment. So the issues that we have to manage is due to climate change because of GES gas. So I don't know the English name, but CO2 and CH4, which are two of the biggest GES gas, and that have a huge effect on biodiversity, water resources, and water resources because of quality and the quantity of water available. And also on biodiversity, and biodiversity is important. We will discuss about it to allow our society, our modern society, to adapt to global change. And one of the last issue is the soil artificialization and destruction, because in the soil we don't discuss enough about this issue. We have a very strong ecosystem that allow to have very good agricultural production, and that allow to capture carbon in the soil. So we have a strong issues. All those issues are very important to have to conserve our social organization, because if there is no food, if there is no energy, and you are well placed in Ukraine to know what does it mean. If you have no economical stability, our society is going to mutate, because we'll have social movement, and this is one explication of several wars around the world. So there is a strong issue to manage global change and environmental issues in a short time, because we have no B planet. One thing is sure now, when you look at global change, is that our life will never be the same, and they will change in a very short time, and we need to adapt to those changes. So I will discuss rapidly on different issues and what it means in the nature. So GES gas have never been so concentrated, and it means that the temperature increase a lot. since 75, it has increased of 0.20 degrees per year. It has never been so high, and this effect of the increase of the temperature has cascade effect because it will create a more contrasted climate with huge hot period, like this summer in France. We had several weeks, several months with more than 40 degrees, even in the Brittany, where normally it rains every day. We have a direct impact on agriculture because of the lack of water, because of cold weather that can arrive in spring very late, like we had also this spring in France. We had frozen morning, even in April, and a lot of tree fruit couldn't produce fruit because of this freezing time. But also we can observe, for example, on rice, that the constitution of rice is different with increase of the temperature and GDS gas, and rice is less there is less hydrate de carbon, less sugar in the rice now than 10 or 20 years ago. So there is a very strong issue on the quantity of the food which will be available, the quality of the food, and where it will be produced. For example, in France, actually, we have a huge wine production, which is based in the south of the country, and farmers are looking to locate same production northern in France, and we can observe several projects of wine production in England, and it means that we have a strong change. Actually, the last impact of effect cascade is on biodiversity, because some species you can read maybe on scientific report, if you are curious on this topic, that a lot of individuals from species have disappeared. So WWF published a study a few days ago explaining that 70% of individuals of different species disappeared because of global warming and human development. It don't mean that 70% of species disappear, but it means that 70% of the individual of species have disappeared. It has a huge effect, because smallest is the population, smallest is the capacity of the population to adapt to new environment conditions. We will discuss later about this question. So the issues that we have to preserve with our regulation is directly linked to our natural reserve resources, water, biodiversity, the soil quality, and agricultural, which is resources which are completely linked. For water resources, this is a resource which is very important. Since we have water, we don't measure the importance of this resource. Actually, water, if you don't look at the quality, it is not a world problem. It is a problem in desert area, but in Europe, actually we have an access to water which is quite good. But for example, in our region, Loire-Atlantique, so we have one of the biggest river of France, which is here maybe 1 kilometer from the office. It is sure that in 30 years, 30, we'll have a lack of water, of drinking water in our region because of the heat of La Loire. That will create algae development, and that will oblige us to have very strong water treatment to be able to drink it. But also the level of the sea is increasing. So the sea salt will go further in the river, and actually we cap drinking water directly in the river, just in the north of Nantes. So some kilometers, maybe 15 kilometers from 20 from our office. But in 30 years, it is sure that sea salt water will go further than this point to capped water. So everywhere, even in region where it rains a lot, to have drinking water, to have water of quality will be a very huge question. The water that we have in surface is as often poor quality because of agriculture, because of industry, because of human activity that pollute this water a lot. So we are obliged to use water, which is really down in the earth for drinking water, but this resources is not so renewable than in the top of the earth. One thing that is also very, very important and that we don't discuss is that the most part of the world population is living directly from sea resources. Around 50% of the world population is living directly or indirectly because of ocean resources. And every river goes in the ocean. And actually our ocean is considered like the widest garbage. So there is also very strong issues to preserve that. Water resources, it is also a source of energy. Energy for hydroelectricity, but also for nuclear plant, because if you have no water, you can't refresh your nuclear plant. And for example, in France this summer, our nuclear plants were stopped, not because they were too old, but because we had no water to refresh it. So this is something very important also that we don't discuss usually. And the last point is that water, surface water, is important for all our industry. You can't create aluminium, you can't look for lithium, you can't make clothes if you have no water. So we have to preserve it to be able to use it for the better. So how to preserve it is to preserve our wetland marshes, because our marshes store water when it rains. And for example, in France, our farmers are putting tubes in a lot of pasture to dry it. But when you dry it when it rains, oh, that's good. But when you have dry time, dry summer, dry spring, dry autumn, as we got, when you dry your soil, you have no water for your plants, and you have no water in the river because the water that we found in river come from soils. And then it has so we have to preserve also the river quality, and the river quality is not only the chemical quality, but also the ecological quality, because when we want to have river in good health, we need to have functional ecosystem with each exchange of population of fish, with exchange of population of mammals, of plants, and so on. We have, for example, some fish that breeds in river, that lay eggs in the river, and that grow in the ocean, in sea, and we have also the contrary. And those species are important for economy, for population, and also to equilibrate the ecosystem of the river. For example, we know that salmon biomass in North American river is very important to feed the ecosystem, because they breed a lot of oligoelements when they are back from migration. So to preserve resources, we have in France and in Europe two types of regulation. First, we have the La Loi sur l'eau. The translation is water law, that was done in 96. It is a very important law in France, because it has introduced in our regulations the precaution principle that didn't exist before. And this principle of precaution can be used when the effect on the environment are durable, and if you have no possibility to go back to the first state of the environment. This is one of the most important principles, that environment principle, that we got now in our constitution. It is in the environmental charter at Article 5, and it is due to this regulation. This regulation built also a special protection for wetlands, for river, and every type of management are described, and what is allowed is described, what is forbidden is described, and the principle to avoid, to reduce, and then to compensate impact is also introduced by this law. In other webinars, we should have persons who are specialists from this regulation that will explain you how it works, because it is a very special one. And in France, in European scale, we have also a special regulation, which is named Directive Cadre. I'm sorry, but I have no real translation for that. This is a European directive that has to be translated in each national regulation to protect water resources. And also, when we'll have a webinar on the law regulation, it will be one part.
Directive
Cadre, C-A-D-R-A-E. So then, for the soil quality, most part of the time we forget that soil is alive. This picture was taken in Moldova, and you have a type of soil that you got also in Ukraine. This is Chernozem. This is the gold. This is the gold of Ukraine, the gold of Europe. It's a type of soil, very fragile, but really, really rich. And this soil, in this soil, we have a huge ecosystem. This ecosystem is made by a lot of insects, of worms, and so on, that assimile organical matière, I don't know, that plants, dead plants, and so on, and they transform it in this soil. But our agriculture, modern agriculture, has a lot of create a lot of problems, because our phytosanitary, our industrial produce used to push agriculture are destroying this life. And when there is no life in our soil, there are we have a strong erosion, and soil are sterilized. For example, in France, we have no Chernozem, but we have very huge yield culture. And because we have no edges around our field, the soil is disappearing because of rainfall. And if you integrate in your mind that because of global warming, we'll have maybe not more rains, but more rain in a shorter time, our soil will be more sensitive to erosion and sterilization. And it is especially the case for Chernozem, because the soil is very, it's like flour when it is dry, and it can disappear very quickly. So in France, we are trying to have a regulation. When regulation is arriving or not, we don't know yet. It is in the tube of our parliament. The goal of the regulation is to propose zero net artificialization. We hope that our parliament would like that as soon as you create a project, in the end, you create no new artificialized area. But for the moment, nothing about agriculture, nothing about the size of field, nothing about soil erosion. My mind, but it's just my mind. We have a strong lobby of chemie. And when the organic soil go away, it's not a problem. We can pay for chemie to push agriculture, but this way cannot allow to have long-term development, because one day we cannot pay for chemie, and it's not solve the question of agriculture. It just delays the question that we'll have to answer.
You mean for chemical using chemicals to save the agriculture harvest, you need to put a lot of
yes. In a lot of field in France, we are obliged to push a lot of to use a lot of chemical produce to increase the agricultural production. But when you look at the result of agricultural production since maybe 10 or 15 years, we are it has stopped to increase. We are at the maximum, and it is going down slowly, but it's going down.
But it's like obligation to put chemicals into the soil. It's like a heritage. You are used to use chemicals.
Yeah.
It's something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
So for soil preservation, we have a lot to do because even in Europe, we go from zero and we have not the best soil in the world. For biodiversity, first we have to integrate that biodiversity gives us a lot of services. This is it allows us to have recreational activity. We can pick mushroom. You can walk with your girlfriend, with your boyfriend, and in the end, in a forest, in marshes to see birds and so on. And also, biodiversity gives us other services. It allows as the nature is able to purify water, to capture a lot of chemical produce that we throw in water. Insects are able to pollinize flowers, tree fruit. Also, biodiversity supply us for food, and it helps us to fight against insects and so on. So there is a huge issue to preserve it. There is an issue to preserve species, but here you have some example. You have this one, which is named in French Rétine de stellaire. It's dugong, a sea mammal that was living in the Bering Sea, and it has disappeared in 20 years. It was discovered in 1740, something like that. And 20 years later, everybody was transformed in oil. You have here another species closer than us, slender-billed curlew. This is a species that breed in Kazakhstan. And that was wintering in North Africa, and that has completely disappeared because marshes in Kazakhstan where they bred were tried for agriculture. And here you have another species which does exist always. In France, it is a really endangered one. We have it only in mountain and it is disappearing. So there is a question of the species, but not only. I told you that WWF wrote that 70% of individuals from species have disappeared. That's what you can see in this picture. You can see that looking for environmental conditions, the average of the population is the most adapted and constitute the center of the population. But this population is also made by extreme, which are not adapted to the actual condition, but have a place in this population because this population is huge and it is due to genetical diversity. And it is because of those extremes of the population that in case of any change in the ecological condition, the population can adapt. If we consider maybe this part of the population, which may be more able than the other to survive in hot conditions, we can imagine to have the average of the population, which is going right, and the left of the population, which is going to disappear slowly and slowly and slowly. But this is possible only if your population is huge. For example, cheetah, which is a species of lion, the one that run a lot in Africa. Cheetah, C-H-E-E-T-A. There is no enough genetical diversity in the population actually to ensure that in case of disease, the population would be able to survive. there is too much consanguinity. So conserving species, it's important, but we have also to not forget that the population of the species is at least more important than the species for ourselves.
Guépard.
Guépard, yes,
Guépard.
in French.
Cheetah, it's guépard. Guépard.
In Ukrainian also?
Yeah,
Guépard?
guépard.
Okay, guépard, I don't know. So we have to protect species, we have to protect population, and we have to protect ecosystem. The ecosystem, in fact, this is the structure of our landscape that have to conserve a huge diversity to allow each species to find our place, because when you have a wide field of agriculture with only one type of corn, with only one type of plants, you have no place for birds, you have no place for insects, you have no place for plants, you have no place for life. So for biodiversity preservation, in the French regulation, we have two ways of regulation. We have spatial regulation with national park, as you got, with reserve, with SNIEF, it's area important for biodiversity. So we have several types of area linked to natural protection with protection level, which is lower for important area for fauna and flora, and maximum for national park. But we have also regulation for species with two types of species, protected one and not protected one. This regulation is really imperfect in France because we don't take care of common species population. So there is a strong lack, and I've been in touch with our ministry a few weeks ago, and they told me that they were discussing to change it as possible it was. But it is very difficult to change this regulation in France, but as soon as you want to change it, NGOs are fighting, they are on strike, and hunters are on strike, and so on. So it is a huge project, but difficult. The second level of regulation we got in France is a European regulation. We'll have other occasion to go in the detail from the European regulation. So the spatial regulation is named Natura 2000. This is a group of natural area which have been designed to be in this conservation program, because there is in those areas species of European interest. Our scientists, I don't know who, but they did a list of birds, of bats, insects, plants, and so on, which have a European interest, and which for we have to use this protection. So in Natura 2000 area, nothing is forbidden. Just one thing. You have to avoid to have significant effect on species conservation, which are important for this Natura 2000 area. For example, if in my Natura 2000 area I have a species of bat, named maybe Murin de Daubenton, no, this one is not European, Myotis Bechstein, I can do what I want, but I will have to make an assessment study special to look if I have any effect on my population of this species in the Natura 2000 area. In the contrary of a national park where you can't do anything. Even walking with a dog, it's forbidden. with Natura 2000, we have two regulations. One special about bird, the bird directive, and one habitat directive that is about plants, insects, bats, fish, sea mammals, and that's all. And directive, the two directive obliged country to have huge protection of European species, European interest species, and to ensure that they will conserve the level of the population in Europe and in Natura 2000 area. So we have some details in the bird directive that allow to that is for hunting, to limit the hunting pressure, and we have some conditions which are interesting. And for me, the European regulation is interesting because it takes care of population and it takes care on human activity. The beginning of the bird directive is that I think it was this is Article 2. This regulation has to be applied, taking care of human recreational activity and human economical activity. Because if we have a regulation which is too strong, which forbid everything, it cannot be applied, because we have to build roads, we have to build bridge, we have to cultivate, we have to cut trees. So we cannot have a regulation too strong that would forbid everything. So that's how our regulation is organized. And we have some good news, because with spoke of issues of not really enjoy things, but we have some good news, because nature is very, very resilient. It just needs one thing. Nature just needs that we let her someplace. We can see that species population can grow very quickly since we let place. For example, you have this picture. This is in a natural reserve in the south of France, which was agricultural field, and since 30 years now, it's a natural reserve full of birds, full of mammals, full of life. You begin to have a rewilding project in Europe. So that's area where we put big mammals and we let them living a life, making the life without human pressure, and we see that ecosystem are restored and have a huge functionality. Maybe you know this horse, the Przeworski horse, that was disappeared from everywhere, and that was introduced in Central Asia, and I think that there are some. Yes, I've read yesterday that it was present. This is typical species from steppe. So nothing is, we didn't lose everything. We just have to work harder to preserve our nature by regulation and by our, I don't know if it is the exactly name, our social intelligence, to find the good way for development of humanity, our society, but also preservation of nature. One last thing, I hope it will give you some hope. When I was young, I was living in the east of Paris, and we had a small forest which was known for amphibians. It was in this forest a lot of farms because of the last war. And 45 years after the war, this area was full of nature. It was back. So nothing, we have some hope, and we have to work hard. That's what I wanted to present you. Slava, Ukraine. I'm sorry for my accent, and if you have a question, I will get off my screen. It's good.
Шановні студенти, можливо, хтось з вас має якісь запитання до Бертрана, то, будь ласка, зараз якраз можна це зробити. Можна задати питання. Ми намагалися зробити першу лекцію такою вводною, взяти якомога більше пластів інформації. Тобто, як ви чули, ми дослідили і питання взагалі правового регулювання, яке існує, наприклад, зосереджене або у Франції, або в європейській спільноті. Далі, відповідно, ми пройшлися по законодавству і по регулюванню, яке стосується земель, водних ресурсів, тварин. І відповідним чином, як все це може відновлюватися, навіть якщо, ну, наприклад, як ми позначали, після Другої світової війни деякі території були знищені, і там взагалі не було жодних тварин, птахів, то після 40 років після війни все це відновлювалось, і відповідним чином можна позначити, що одна з найважливіших таких особливостей саме природи – це те, що вона дуже швидко може відновлюватись, якщо навіть робити невеличкі кроки для того, щоб якось її підтримувати. От одна з найцікавіших, мені здається, речей, яку Бертран сказав, це така social intelligence, тобто це така соціальна відповідальність і соціальна, ну, так, особиста така відповідальність щодо того, що для вас важливо, наприклад, ви розумієте, що якщо сьогодні знищити всіх горобців, то завтра саранча може знищити всі наші врожаї. Ну, приблизно так. Так, питань у нас немає, всі поки що соромляться.
As for me, I would like to say thank you to Bertrand, because as for me, as I begin, it was very interesting, and even I catch myself on that moment that I want to move your presentation and to see what will be the next. So thank you, it was very interesting, and I want to agree with the last position that if we will give the chance for nature, we will see the beauty of our earth, yes. Because, for example, we have in Ukraine such areas, Chernobyl area, and before 2022, the nature there was given the maybe one more chance, yes, and really the horse, the bears, wolves, and all other animals and flowers, we have a lot of information that begins their new life, yes. So yes, I think that all points that was and ideas that was told to us about our eco-active position and doing nothing with nature, maybe like this, will help us to have and see the beauty of our nature and earth, for example. Thank you.
Yes, and I have a question, maybe it will be interesting for everyone. When you were talking about French regulation, it is more strict, like more about protected areas, that the activities are forbidden and so on. And then Natura 2000, it's like more, you can do everything, just avoid the influence. So it's like the two different types of attitude. And what do you think? What is more needed? What is better, or it should be a balance?
So regarding the special protection, in fact, Natura 2000 has been translated in the French regulation, and it is another regulation than national parks and natural reserve than SNIEF, for example. So it comes and completes the regulation of nature that we got, special regulation that we got. The biggest difference that we have in between our regulation, national regulation, and European one is for protecting species. Because if you take the European Bird Directive, the Article 5 explained that our state have to ensure that every species is protected. But there are some exceptions. If you want to kill one small quantity of bird, of individual, from a small quantity of species, if you are able to have precise monitoring from those kills to be able to stop before the population is in danger, you should be able to kill this part of the population. And in France, our regulation, when you have a protected species, it's protected. You have to ask the possibility of making your project, maybe, but in most part of the time, it is forbidden. And the level of your population is not connected to the fact that it is protected or not. For example, the small brown bird that you have in your garden, that you have in the center of Kiev, Passer domesticus, a small... Where is my phone? I don't know. Yes. This species is protected in France.
Горобці захищені, їх не можна винищувати в Франції.
We call that, this is le piaf in Paris, the small bird that when you drink a coffee, you have on the chair. It is protected. But if you look at, you remember the bird that I show you, which is in France, in mountain, this one.
We have the bird here. No, it's not as well as this computer.
Excuse me. Okay. Okay, this bird, this one is not protected in France, even if the population is just made by several pairs, maybe less than 100. So now, this year, it's forbidden to hunt it, but last year, it was not preserved. So there is a big gap between the two regulation, because if you want to rebuild your house, you have nest of martin, martin. You are not able to do. You have to ask the state to rebuild your house. It's crazy.
Французьке законодавство говорить про те, що якщо ти хочеш зробити ремонт в будинку, а в тебе є гніздо ластівок, ти не можеш це зробити, тому що ластівки в Франції, вони захищені, вони під захистом. І да, це інколи, звичайно, що у звичайних людей виникають складнощі, тому що, ну, це є craziness because of that.
And when you look at those two regulations, you look at that the French one comes from 76. It was the first regulation for nature, and it was done to preserve raptors against hunters. So we say, okay, we have a list of bird species that you cannot destroy. They are protected. And when the European regulation came, in spite of rebuilding from zero the French regulation, they add the European one on the old French one. And now we have two regulations which evaluate separately and which are completely different. And you can see that European Union want to push green energy development to fight against global warming. And in France, and European communities say that those projects are of social interest and need to be to have a sweet regulation applied for natural regulation, because we need those projects to protect nature. And in France, say no, it's not possible. You cannot build your wind farm because there is a small bat, there is a small bird, and even if this bird is common, you are not able to kill one, even one individual. Yes, but I cannot prevent this mortality because this is an aleatory one and so on. No, you are not able to kill one. Yes. So no project. And here you can see that you have the first part important in the European regulation is human society activity, recreational activity, and we consider that taking care of biodiversity is for our society. And you have the French regulation, and no, just nature, and we take care of nothing. We don't consider that we can have some activities like green energy, which are working against global warming and which are important to preserve our biodiversity.
Yeah. So it's the case for us, like as Ukraine is on the step before European Union, so we have time to take some mistakes into consideration and avoid them and build our regulation regarding environment like more smart.
Yes, and if we want to, when the French regulation was built in '76, nobody believed that would have believed that biodiversity would become a so important question. So they didn't. In my mind, I think they didn't reflect so far on the consequences of this regulation. But in the case of a new one, the first question you have to discuss is what is the goal of the regulation, and should you preserve the social organization and everything that make that this social organization work, biodiversity, water resources, and so on. But you need to have some economical development, and you have to know what you are going to do for this development and what you will not want to do and how you will preserve. It's not very clear with my English, but
no, it's okay. But I have a question, because I think all students and lawyers also have a question. There is no argue between French regulation, which have their own goal, and whole European regulation that have different goal. There is no argues or in some kind of question.
There are argues, but sometimes for green energy project, when we go to the court, in the court of Bordeaux, with argues, we go to the court of I don't know, in the east of France, with the same argues, with the same question. In one case, we win. In one case, we lose because of those argues. So it's completely incredible. And as the regulations are different, they are not on the same way. They are not parallel. If you want, you can look at the empty bottle, or the half empty, or the full bottle, and it depends just on the person who will decide. And the complicated thing also that we have is that for this type of question, when it is a question of building permit for withdraw, for example, this is a writing request to the court. You have no discussion with the president of the administrative court. It's just an exchange of report. So when you are discussing with a judge which has administrative experience, you are discussing about biodiversity and why the French regulation is crazy and so on. When you have, I don't know, 600 pages of report on your right, 600 pages left, and you have to separate the two and say who is right. It's impossible for the judge to discuss about that. In some case, we can have short process when you have a request to the court, and in this case, this is an oral one. And when you are able to explain with your words to the judge what is a biological question, what is an administrative question, what is a regulation question, and you can enter in the detail very deeply and with pedagogy, the most part of the time you win. But you need to be able to have time and to explain. And when you have somebody face to you, when my English is too poor, I see in your eyes that there is something wrong, and I can adapt and I can find a way to explain. But when you send 600 pages of discussion, you cannot see if the guy is sleeping because it is too boring. So it is difficult to send them a storm. Say, oh, you do a bullshit, but they are just human, and there are not enough culture in this type of topic, because also in France, you will stop to learn biology when you are when you are 15. When you are 15, it is the last year of your life when you will study biology.
It's enough.
Seriously?
Yes. Yes.
Such limitation?
If you want to.
Because of what?
It's new.
It's like tradition or
No. It's the new school.
It doesn't exist in Ukraine at all.
In 14 years in Ukraine, it's the most interesting part of biology. It's the reproductive system of human.
They will stop just after that. And so this is a big question for the future, because if you want to be a judge, a lawyer, when you are 15 or 16, this is the last year when you do biology. And what did you learn? And you will have to discuss about the soil quality, the soil ecosystem, how the soil is taking chemical produce, how they will transform it in Chernozem, why the Chernozem is so important, and so on. It's so deep question with a so poor culture that we have so crazy decision in the most part of the time when we go to the court.
Okay, I think it will be the end. And also, I want to ask, make a photo, maybe with.
Yes, and if somebody,
Mhm.
if you have question, if you, I don't know,
Mhm.
you can do not hesitate to send a mail in Ukrainian to Nastya or Anya.
Mhm.
In English, for me, there is no problem. And it will be a pleasure to have discussion and to answer questions, to send the document, whatever, I don't know.
Yes.
Um,
You have a presentation. Yeah, we have a presentation from today. We have I've done small notes about today's lecture, and we will send you in answer to this question, to this email. You can ask your questions.
yeah. And if you have some topics, if some topics have interest you particularly, tell us. We will look in our professional network to find good persons.
We will stop recording.